Hello and welcome to another episode of The Joy of the Rediscovered album. And my, do I have a big smile on my face at the moment. I've not listened to this album in such a long time, but at the time, I listened to this obsessively. So 1982, Scorpions would have been one of my favourite bands at the time, actually. And I'll talk a little bit about that. I've slightly altered the format in this episode and probably going forward to what it was up till now, in terms of what I found was happening is I was digging a little bit too deep, and I'm in danger of getting very repetitive on later episodes with certain bands. So I've sort of re-picked various tabs and various websites I'm going to use. I've backed off Wikipedia a little bit in certain areas to stop me digging too deep. So those are the things I've changed, but we'll see how things pan out today. But yeah, I did a test video that I haven't uploaded at all, because I'm going to redo it at some point in the future, or redo that particular album that I chose later in the series. And so I've skipped over a year that I was going to cover at this point and moved on to the Scorpions, but it doesn't make any difference because I'm jumping around anyway. So if I hadn't have said that, you'd be none the wiser. But yeah, I did do a run through with the old format on another album, and it was getting to the point where it's just getting to, just digging far too deep in wider areas. So I'm dialing it back a little bit. So let's have a look, and I'm going to spend a little bit longer as well looking at the Wikipedia article for the albums going forward. Also, something you can't really benefit from, but if you did, I would get copyright strikes, is I'm actually playing the album through my headphones, but it's not being recorded by my screen capture software, which is rather nice. So yeah, but I will include a playlist, and on that playlist, and again this will be a thing going forward, it'll include popular albums from the genre from that year for the album that I'm talking about, and then I'll include a few other albums that I was listening to. So the start of the playlist will be a combination of albums that I was listening to and also wasn't, or hadn't listened to at the time, but very much in that vicinity of the genre. And you'll see in a moment exactly what might come up. And then I'll just keep adding, I think, to the playlist over time, and add in some other stuff that I was listening to which wasn't in the genre or subsequently listened to. So a popular album, we'll talk about in a moment about how this fits into their sort of release, the timeline of their releases over the years and where I got into the band. But seeing this for a while now, I'd completely forgotten actually that this was quite a potentially tricky period for the band, because this was when Klaus Meine had to undergo surgery for his vocal cords, and until I just quickly scanned through this Wikipedia article before I did this video, I'd completely forgotten this, and now I re-remember it, because I was really quite concerned, because I was big into the band, like what was going to happen, how is he even replaceable? How do you find someone like that? And of course I'd completely forgotten that they actually did demos of this stuff with Don Dokken from Dokken, who at that point weren't as well known as they went on to be. I did actually have a Dokken album, Breaking the Chains. Actually came out in 81. I don't know when it was released in the US, not till 83, but in Europe, Breaking the Chains came out in 81. So I actually had that when it came out. So yeah, I was well aware of Dokken, and I do particularly like that album. But yeah, back to Scorpions, because that's what we're talking about. And yeah, it's cool. I've got China White playing at the moment, because I started the album actually before I started recording this, as I was just prepping. I do a few sort of vocal dry runs, where I just talk through what I might say in some opening remarks. So yeah, I'd already run through that a few times. So I'm quite deep into the album on my headphones at the moment. We're down here. I don't think there's one bad track on the album. And of course, it has the obligatory. I mean, with any Scorpions album, you've got to have your ballady type stuff, the slow stuff, and that would be, I suppose, this track, which I haven't got to yet. And I'm trying to think with this, I should probably check my record collection. I do know I have this single on I have this single. I was going to say I have this single on single. I have this single on 7-inch. And I'm not sure if I have that or not. At this point, I was buying 7-inch singles alongside other stuff. When we go through, you'll see this year actually I was buying quite a lot of vinyl. And it was so I'd already, by this time I'd been, so I left school around May of 81 and went into work not long after that. So the firm I was working for, which was working in a lab at that point in microbiology, by March, I was almost not quite a year in. I was also being sent to college alongside that. So I was working, and we got a day off in the week to go to college, and then I used to go in the evening as well. So that was going on in terms of work-wise in the background. And my point is, I suppose, by that time, I had a bit more disposable income. And so, my record buying had increased from the previous year and years. You can see there's a deluxe edition. On my any playlist I tend to do, I actually remove all the deluxe edition tracks from any stuff, so you get to hear the albums in there, how they were originally. So it does credit Don Dokken as backing vocals. I'm not sure if that is genuinely the case. I mean, it says none of the recordings are featured on the album, and Dokken is only credited with backing vocals, so maybe they're just referring to him not having any lead vocals, or maybe they just put it on there credited with that because he contributed to the demo tape, and that was a sort of reward for that. Not sure. I'd have to dig a little bit deeper. I'm sure there's an interview there, so I'll include links to this so you can dig deeper yourself. I didn't know this, and I did have Kerrang issue 12. I should maybe reread this article. So there's actually different versions of a guitar solo on China White when you compare the US to the European. I didn't know that until literally just as I was about to record this, and I read through this. Self-portrait of the artist Gottfried Hellwine. Okay. It was interesting because I thought that was specifically supposed to be Rudolf Schenker. So that implies that it wasn't, it was a self-portrait of the artist. Pretty dramatic cover. Also, I probably have this album in 3 versions now. In that I've got I got it on vinyl because I checked. I got the original album on vinyl. Bought it when it came out, which is the case with all of these Rediscovered albums. That's one criteria, is I had to have bought the album around the time it came out. I also have a cassette version, just to make it convenient for when I played it in the car. Even though initially, of course, I used to just record vinyl onto cassette, but eventually when I had a little bit more money, sometimes I would buy the album also on cassette, although not too often. And then ultimately I owned this on CD as well, I'm pretty sure. Let me have a check, because I have a lot of my stuff stored on the cloud just for convenience. Oh, so I am on to When the Smoke is Going Down now in the background. Yeah, that's the slow one. And I've always got accustomed over the years to the Scorpions having a slow track, at least one slow track on their albums. So yeah, 3 singles. You can see it's, well, not rated so high by Rolling Stone, but All Music and Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal. Is that the... Yeah, that's the Martin Popoff. I think I have that on my e-reader, actually. So one thing I did want to start to try and introduce into this series is maybe, if I can, try and pinpoint where I locked into the album. Now, of course, I was already a fan of the Scorpions, and we'll get on to where I was pacing them, if you like, the point at which I was buying albums as they came out. But I suppose thinking back, what would have clued me into the release of the album and the release of the singles off the album. And of course, one possible source is Sounds magazine and Melody Maker, which I was reading at the time. But the other thing is I would have been listening to the Friday Rock Show, so I'm rather conveniently on the Friday Rock Show wiki here. And believe it or not, I actually remember this week, and there's a couple of reasons why I do now, or I have rediscovered that memory. And that's one because on this episode, Tommy Vance actually announced the death of Randy Rhoads. And the other thing is, I did have a tape with some of this evening on it, and I remember this session by Budgie being on there. So that's actually what sticks in my head more than anything. Is there's I'm pretty sure this is the track. I'm just looking to see what else they played. But I think this is the one off the album where there's a instrumental ending to it. At least that's what I remember. So yeah, Budgie. And of course, as we'll see, the first Asia album had come out that year. We've got One Night at Budokan, which was originally, I think, a Japanese-only release, and then it got released on import and then finally released in the UK. But I'll need to check. We'll see if that comes up. As I said, I'm not going to be digging quite as deep as usual, so it may not come up in the discussion today. But yeah, it's another album that I must have been made aware of as a result of the Friday Rock Show, because, like I said, initially that was only available on import, from what I remember. Oh, I've on the playlist now in the background. Let me just quickly show you. So, yeah, got some other stuff from '82 that we'll talk about. I just checked in the background, and yeah, I do also have Blackout on CD. Basically on the CD I have Blackout, Love Drive, Taken by Force and Tokyo Tapes. So as we're talking about discography now, let's just have a look at this. So yeah, probably my inroad to the band was when I heard tracks from Animal Magnetism played on the Friday Rock Show initially, and I got a feeling it was the Zoo. And then as a result of that, I then infilled. So I think the first vinyl, then this would be before Blackout. So Blackout was the first album I bought when it came out. And then I backfilled over a period of time. I think one of my brothers was also into the band. But I remember buying these two albums on a German record label as like a double album. Sorry, these two. Fly to the Rainbow and In Trance. Thinking about it, I've never owned a vinyl copy or any copy, I think, of Lonesome Crow. I've only listened to it on streaming. So yeah, so basically got into the band sometime around here, backfilled from this point really onwards, probably jumped around a little bit, and then from that point onwards was in pace with the band up to here. So this was the last album I bought when it came out. And then really from that point onwards, I didn't really keep up with the band. But when was it? Let me find here. So yeah, 2015 into 2016, they did this big tour. And the tour passed through Canada, specifically Moncton. And me and my wife went up to see them in Moncton. Awesome gig there, just amazing live. Queensryche played as well. I'm not quite sure what the lineup of Queensryche that was, because there's a bit of a, what would you call it, like a schism in the band, I think. In fact, I need to check now and see who. Let's look at the band member lineup. Oh, there we go, yeah. Toddler Tory, so yeah, lead vocals. Okay. Go. So yeah, they supported Scorpions. And that's the only time I've seen them. Was then. And they were just incredible. And then what I'll do, we'll just quickly look at their time, so we can get their timeline. And I've spoken about Scorpions in previous musical themed videos I've done. So I suppose the longest serving member of the band, if you go back to 1965, would be Rudolf Schenker. Klaus Meine, how you say that? Probably mangling that. Yep. Second longest serving. And I suppose, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before, I do really like this period with Uli John Roth. I like the Matthias Jab's period as well, and of course he's the current lead guitarist. That was that really weird period when Michael Schenker rejoined the band around the time of Love Drive, which was really interesting. And I was always curious when I bought the album, pre-internet, as to why his name turned up on that album. So yeah, that was an interesting period in the band to read about. And obviously Michael Schenker in the interim, his involvement with UFO, and then subsequently on to have a solo career. And then during this period here, when I was most into the band, you have a same bass player all the way through that period, and to some degree Hammond Rebel, of course, as well through that period. Although you can see for some of the albums in the period when I was most into them, different drummers here. So yeah, this, I suppose you could say that this period here was fairly stable, sort of Matthias Jab's era up to here. And then really, I suppose looking at it, that's probably their most consistent, although I always get wrong-footed because sometimes you look later and it seems that there's more consistency around this period. But yeah, definitely, as you can see, when I went through here, 74 to 90 was my favourite period with the band. Now, I thought it'd be interesting to look on Last FM. This is something I want to start doing, and just look for similar artists. And I've used different things for doing this over various music-themed videos that I've done. So you can see then it would be the usual suspects would crop up. So Rainbow, Whitesnake, Deep Purple, UFO, Accept, Europe, Nazareth, Uriah Heep, Michael Schenker Group, Bon Jovi. Out of this list, probably the bands that I have most purchased their records, CDs, vinyl, whatever, is probably Rainbow, definitely UFO, Accept, some Michael Schenker Group, and some Bon Jovi. No Nazareth really. I have one Uriah Heep album, which I'm sure we'll get onto because I think it was released this year. Got a few classic Deep Purple, was it Mark IV, Mark IV, Mark V era period, and a few Whitesnake albums as well. I thought it'd be interesting to look at the Kerrang end of year list for 82, which is the first year they started doing these, and for the playlist that I'm going to link to, I've started out with these, and it's quite revealing actually, because when I look down the list at this, I bought that when it came out, I bought that when it came out. At that point I wasn't keeping up with Rush for some reason. I didn't buy Signals. I didn't buy Creatures of the Night till later. I've never listened to this album. That's why I'm going to put it on the playlist at some point. I'll get to listening to it. Listen to this, or bought this when it came out. In fact, I think we may have even had 2 copies of this in the house. Definitely bought that when it came out. I don't even know I've got it, because I think it ended up on the wall of my bedroom, but I bought the one with the poster, Scream of Vengeance poster in this. I didn't buy this at the time, but I do have it on CD. I have heard some of this album. mainly from the Friday Rock Show. And I haven't listened to that at all. So it's going to be an interesting playlist. Singles of the year. That's funny. Don't Stop Believing. Eye of the Tiger. Wow, yeah. And Marillion Market Square Heroes. I think the Marillion album may have come out in 83, their first album, sorry, but they had an early single out, Market Square Heroes. That may have even been an EP. And I don't know if me or one of my brothers had this single. So, I'm not going to go through, like I have in the previous episode, go through the whole year systematically in Wikipedia, but I just wanted to look at it like in month either side. So, you know, around that time, so the same month that the Blackout came out, Asia, I always smile when I see this, because I had a really, at that point, around that period, in 82, actually would have been a little bit later, thinking about it. I'm just trying to think when I moved over to immunology. It may have been sometime in 82, actually thinking about it. But I went from working in a prep lab, which was more on the production side of things, to working in technical production, which was still aligned with production, but we used to do technical preparations for immunological products. And I had this really cool senior tech at the time. And he was big into like old school metal and hard rock, and he was also big Led Zeppelin fan. In fact, I can't remember a day where he wasn't wearing his Led Zepp t-shirt, actually. But I remember him really getting quite excited about Asia. Yeah. Because of course, associations with Yes. So what else have we got here? Because Number of the Beast I've already mentioned. Toto 4 came out. So that would be with Africa on it. Blackout by the Scorpions. Filth Hounds of Hades came out. Now, the other thing I did spot here, it might be the subsequent year, that around this time Iron Fist by Motorhead came out. So let's just walk forward into April. Yeah, I had this, as I said, when it came out, and I'm just playing that in the background at the moment. I really love this album, actually. Pretty interesting as well, some of the stuff they did on there. Yeah, there's Iron Fist. So the reason why I bring this up this must have been in 82. I saw Motorhead at Crawley Leisure Centre with Tank supporting, and I bought both a Motorhead t-shirt and a Tank t-shirt. I still have the Motorhead t-shirt, Motorhead England t-shirt, although it has no sleeves on it. Now, I just kept it for really posterity. The Filth Hounds of Hades t-shirt has long gone, that long bit the dust, and that had the album cover on it in, I think it was in green. So yeah, black t-shirt with green writing, I think. But yeah, it had that style on it. So yeah, that was a cool gig. Oh, and this I bought when it came out, Abominog. On the strength of me hearing, where's it gone? They played on the radio, Too Scared to Run. I don't have much memories of the rest of the album. In fact, I probably could have featured that as this year I was sport for choice. There could be loads of albums which I haven't listened to for an awful long time, and Abominog would be one of them. And also, yeah, I suppose, actually, probably all the ones I've mentioned. I mean, it's been a long while since I've listened to Diver Down. I can't even, in fact, I didn't even own Iron Fist. I think one of my brothers owned it. So yeah, I've not listened to it since listening to it in their bedroom in, 82? Wow. I was so disappointed for that tour as well. So, I'm thinking, oh yeah, it'd be great. I'll get to see the Bomber, that lighting rig, the Bomber lighting rig. And of course, for the Iron Fist tour, they changed it to all these weird, like, draped flags with these strange symbols on them, I think, if that's right. I mean, I know they didn't have the Bomber there. I was so disappointed that they didn't have the Bomber anymore. And then they reintroduced it, obviously. But, yeah. And unfortunately, I don't think I've... No, I'm pretty sure I haven't seen them again since then. So 82 was the only time I saw Motorhead. Wow. So I'm going wow because this recording that you can't hear. Yeah, I forgot for the Van Halen album, Diver Down, the number of covers on it. Well, I said the number of covers. Yeah, hang on. So yeah, so you've got Where Have All the Good Times Gone, Ray Davies, Oh Pretty Woman, Dancing in the Street, which has just come on, and then Big Bad Bill, and then Happy Trails. Although I do remember that Van Halen used to have quite a lot of covers, and I'm sure I saw an episode, one of those episodes of, was it like MTV music episodes, where they go through why that's the case, that there's all these covers on various Van Halen albums. Yeah. Wasn't it the case that... Yeah, I'd have to dig deeper, but wasn't it the case that Dave Lee Roth liked doing covers? Yeah, anyway, I'm not sure. There was some reason why that was the case, particularly for that album. Okay, looking to the previous month that Scorpions Blackout came out. We've got February here. What do I remember? So I do remember that this had Soldier of the Line on it, because they played that on the Friday Rock Show. But I didn't buy the album when it came out. Mechanics. The only reason why I have a copy of this actually is several years later, when one of my uncles visited us. He lived down in not Cornwall, Lyme Regis, and he used to come up occasionally and bring all this stuff with him that he'd acquired from, various thrift stores and stuff like that. And he gave me a couple of pieces of vinyl, actually 3. One was Mechanics by UFO, and this would have been when I was already into the band, and the other one was some French rock artist. I can't remember the name of the artist. And the other one, which was cool, was the Warriors soundtrack, and they're in pretty good condition as well. Wow, this is why I like these episodes so much, is that I just suddenly get these memories that come back of stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure I still have the Warriors vinyl and this, but yeah, not sure. But then I probably own this on cassette at some point, and obviously now, I mean, it's a bit of a moot point because I can stream so much, so yeah. Okay, so I thought it'd be good to keep this in the series, which is just to look, because one of the things I wanted to do with this, as well as look at it through the lens of, okay, here's this band, here's my sort of relationship with the album when it came out, here's who else I was listening to, these are bands that were in the similar genre space, if you like, and other stuff that was coming out around that time, but also like what was the musical zeitgeist in the UK at the time. And I'm making this also generally with other stuff a little bit more UK focused, because then I can personally relate to it a little bit more at that time frame. So this was what was going on. These were the number one albums from 82. So you have Visitors by ABBA. Now, admittedly, these may have come out the previous year. Dare by Human League, which I think that came out in 81. Because I remember that being all over the charts. Don't You Want Me at the end of 81, I think. So the singles were already out. Although this may have hit the charts fairly quick. I can just click on, yeah, October 81. There we go. Answered the question. The other thing here, we might see, unless they've ditched it, so there's band compilation albums here. I think the only various artist ones that are listed here would be for soundtracks. So yeah, looking through, The Gift by The Jam, that was their final album. Number of the Beast, of course. Who doesn't own this album? If you're a rock stroke metal fan. 1982 by The Quo. Third solo album by Mr. McCartney. It's the greatest hits from Madness. This is an awesome album. In fact, if you've never checked out Roxy Music, definitely check them out. Yeah, they're just such a cool band. I mean, by this time we were up to Sophistipop era, but yeah. Mexican of Love by ABC. We'll be talking about like the antithesis of bands that I was listening to, and this band would have been very much the antithesis. Although I did warm to them later and did end up buying probably this, and what was the one after that? Not Beauty Stab, How to Be a Zillionaire. I think I have that. Probably have that on cassette. But not at that time. Oh, Love Over Gold. Yeah, this does not. This is an interesting album because I just remember Private Investigations being played over and over and over again on a local jukebox to a pub I went to, or should I say a jukebox in a local pub I went to, and yeah, and also I think, I don't remember buying this when it came out. I think I didn't buy it till the following year. And I think this was one of the albums on a road trip I took with a friend. We went camping down in Cornwall in 83. But then this also sadly reminds me of getting very sick in 84 as well. So yeah, I had a really bad bout of mono, as we call it in the UK, glandular fever, and yeah, knocked me for 6 and took me, well, a long time to recover actually. Yeah, so I don't have good memories of that particular album, unfortunately. So in looking at like what was, so those were the, what was it, the number one albums, but in terms of just best-selling albums, when you look at record sales, you see the same sort of things come up, but it's interesting. You get other things like Rio by Duran Duran. It was funny with Duran Duran because in, well, 81 through to 85, I was going to college alongside working. So I was being sent to college by my employer, and the person I initially went to, firstly Crawley College with, he was a big Duran Duran fan. So I was exposed osmotically to both this album and the previous album. And as a consequence, although they were the antithesis of what I was listening to, I ended up actually getting into them quite heavily subsequently. As I did, although I wasn't exposed specifically to this, but once I rediscovered or discovered the Human League's slightly more experimental early stuff, I subsequently got into them as well. Upstairs at Eric's by Yazoo. I remember this coming out. A friend of mine used to play Yazoo a lot in their car, different friend. Stop Erotic Cabaret. And of course Chariots of Fire. It was big that year. Queen had that greatest hits out in 81, and that was still like on the charts. Has that ever left the charts? Japan were up to Tin Drum. Yeah, I didn't get into them until a little bit later. So yeah, that's how things were selling at that time on the UK charts. Brit Awards wise, you can see Best Producer Martin Rushent, so he's worked with Human League, Stranglers, Buzzcocks, amongst others. Breakthrough Act, the Human League, even though they were quite album-wise, quite deep in by that point. Although they'd had a massive reboot, effectively, where I think everybody had exited the band apart from Phil Oakley. Best-selling album, Kings of the Wild Frontier, but that had come out in... That's funny, that was November 1980, so you have to be really careful with these awards. They get a bit behind the curve. So yeah, this is what I wanted to start doing in terms of, this is much more visually interesting, I think, to use this to give us a broader overview of that year than me scrolling through Wikipedia articles. So I've got this filtered by heavy metal as a genre, and there's a number of albums I've already mentioned already, but you can sort of see here, yeah, I mean this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one I bought when they came out. My brother owned that one. I owned this one later. This one later. Never bought any Anvil on vinyl, although I have listened to this. And I remember Baron Rojo was starting to get exposure through the Friday Rock Show. They were like a Spanish heavy metal band. Ended up, they played at Reading at some point as well. So hard rock. I just wanted to bring this up because there's going to be some stuff here that hasn't been mentioned, because there's always a bit of an overlap. Wasn't on the previous list, so yeah. So Van Halen, I bought that when it came out. I remember the actual track Eye of the Tiger being huge at the time, or seemed to be. Yeah, I bought that when it came out. Again, my friend, my senior tech stroke friend at work, when I worked in immunology, I'd mentioned about them, being really excited about the Asia album coming out, so being into Led Zeppelin, and this was slightly later in the year after Scorpions album. Yeah, when this came out, yeah, Pictures at 11. I've got this on my playlist as well. I hadn't got into Hanoi Rocks. I don't think I was even aware of Hanoi Rocks at that point. Took me a little while, but I do. There was a really cool box set came out sometime in the 2000s, towards the end of the 2000s, which have all of their albums up to, was it One Step from the Move? I think that's what it's called, up in them. I think as facsimile albums. I've got a Sabbath box set a bit like that from Aussie era. I do remember Aldenova. I'm not sure if I have this album, but I certainly remember Fantasy from that period, and I mentioned that I did buy that when it came out. I'm going to also take a look at, when I do these episodes going forwards using Album of the Year, I'm going to look at other genres that I was starting to explore, or alongside now, of course, as over time, when we get to later years, because I'm bouncing backwards and forwards. So, you know, the probably any time after about 85, from that point onwards, my record buying gets more eclectic generally. But even that point, you know, I had quite broad ears listening wise. So what I'm going to try and do with the episode is pick like another genre outside of the album I'm talking about, which, you know, I was also probably starting to check out a lot more on my, and this really sticks out. So Killing Joke Revelations. And I bought that because it had Empire Song on it. This things like Forever Now, I didn't buy until a lot later, and I do remember this album. And The Sky's Gone Out, probably bought the following year, and this Pornography, probably fairly close to when it came out, because I was definitely listening to The Cure. I think I've mentioned in other music videos, there was another friend from work who, if they saw me sort of at the side of the road on, you know, certain days when, for whatever reason, maybe I didn't have a lift with my other friend to college, they'd stop and pick me up. And they were a big Thin Lizzy and Cure fan. And so, yeah, they got me appreciating The Cure a lot more. And that started probably, yeah, around that time. Actually, would have been 81, because I was going to 82, because I was going to college then. And then I thought it'd be there's Force the Hand of Chance. I didn't really listen to that until the 2000s. That's an interesting album, because Cabaret Voltaire, yeah, this goes a lot further actually. This is the post-punk filter. And so what I'm also going to do is look at, to me, what would be the antithesis of my particular album. So I think synth pop is probably the best antithesis. But what's funny is when I look through this now, I mean, at the time I probably would have, you know, caught fire looking at this, you know, but it's quite amusing, because when I look at this now and think, oh yeah, there's quite a few albums here that probably, an artist that probably some of my favourites. So like the Human League, like early Human League. There's a really good documentary I watched a while back on Klaus Nomi, Captain Sensible, Women and Children's First. I do not have that album. I was a big Damn fan and was pretty mortified when he did this with Happy Talk. Anything here? Yeah, probably got into Ultravox once I heard All Stood Still. I realised just, you know, how heavy they could be. And, yeah, it took me quite a number of years to really warm to Simple Minds. Not until, I would say, 86, 87, I bought this album, and I think the one before it, or the one after it, was it Sparkle in the Rain? I think it probably comes after this. This I ended up buying a lot later. This is one early Depeche Mode album I never actually ended up buying. And I also have this as well on CD. And this is an interesting band, The Associates. I did have this on cassette. I think the cassette warped at some point. And just to pull back fully to 82 album releases without any genre filtration. So now this gives us a really interesting overview. So yeah, Thriller came out that year. I always get confused because there were so many singles off that album that just spread over a really wide period of time. So if you were to ask me when I thought Thriller came out, not knowing it was 82, I would say 83. Cure Pornography, The Dreaming by Kate Bush. Has that got Running Up the Hill on it? I think might do. Can you? I don't know if I want to drill through here. No, maybe that must be a later album then. Okay. Is that Cloud Bursting? Yeah, I'm not good on anything past about the first 2 or 3 albums with Kate Bush in terms of remembering what came out. 1999 by Prince. Yeah, because Bad Brains album came out. Descendants, Mile Goes to College. Nebraska, The Clash, Combat Rock. Has that got Rock the Casbah on it? Yeah. Oh god, yeah, I remember that. Hearing that all the time. There's certain tracks for some reason I associate with going to college, and that's one of them. The other one is the Killing Joke album, Revelations, because Empire Song, which is a track, the reason why I gravitated towards them is that like back in 82 at college in Crawley, there would be very few like what I would call full-on punks, like with the mohawk and and this guy had like a cut-off in like a battle jacket, but like he looked like a biker punk, so he had a leather jacket with a denim battle jacket over the top, and it looked like he painted it. It had Empire Song on the back by Killing Joke, and I was like super impressed. Just the fact that it looked like it had been hand painted. So yeah, I was in the strength of the only punk at Crawley College. I got into, or was, further convinced to buy Revelations by Killing Joke. There's Rio, Duran Duran, so yeah, that's some of the stuff we've already spoken about. Misfits, Walk Amongst Us came out in 82. Ambient 4 on Land. Mirage. Black Metal by Venom. Of course, Discharge, Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing. Now that's a classic. But I wasn't really listening to Discharge. Didn't really listen to sort of, I suppose, like anarcho-punk and like UK, if you like, the sort of UK as well, the UK version, I suppose, of hardcore punk. Like Second Wave, I think sometimes might be referred to, until a little bit later. Probably not until I got into like the Subhumans or Charged GBH maybe. According to this, Message came out in 82. Is this... I always get confused with what would this be? Peter Gabriel 4, maybe? Not listened to much Christian death, if any. To Rye. It's Hard by the Who, and so on. Oh, Diamanda Gallas. Mentioned her in a previous episode. Yep. First Billy Idol album. Yeah, I didn't really get into him until what? Oh, stop it. 83. Maybe later, actually. Yeah, no, actually, no, thinking about 85. So I thought it would be interesting to look at. So these are British films produced in 82. And what I was curious about is what comes up here. So I think I'll stick to this. So probably most of these I didn't probably see until they came out on video, so a lot later. But there is one here. So yeah, going down the list, Dark Crystal, first time I saw that was on video. Same with Gandhi. I did go to the cinema to see this. Pink Floyd's The Wall. Which one was that one? 7th. Oh, that was just after he died. This is after he died. No, I didn't see that. And this one I'm confused about. I think I saw this on video, probably not until, I don't know. I'm trying to think when we even got our video recorder. Was it 84? Maybe 83, 84 perhaps. Yeah, saw that on video. I mean, most of these now, because they're so old, have probably turned up on TV. It had Brimstone and Treacle, had Sting in it. And yeah, I saw that in video as well. There was a spate of like UK comedians appearing in films, in UK produced films. And then TV. I thought I'd look at sort of what was around that time on UK TV. So in March, in terms of, like what was turning up, because a lot of the time, if you didn't go to the cinema and you didn't have a video recorder, which in 82 I think would have been a pretty rare thing, I suppose. The first opportunity you got to see films was when they premiered on BBC, on the BBC or ITV, and at that point, I think in 82, there wasn't really. I mean, in terms of, yeah, I'm just thinking what had sort of kicked in, in terms of the technology. I mean, I suppose, early video. I did know somebody that had a laser disc, because I remember sometime in 83 maybe, going around and watching Alien on Laserdisc. But yeah, so television premiere in 82 of Magnum Force from 1973. 6 months before, the BBC showed the first Dirty Harry film. Logan's Run from 76. Spy Who Loved Me from 77. So yeah, you get the feeling. Previous month you had John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978. So yeah, took a few years for the blockbusters to filter through. But yeah, I probably remember seeing this on TV for the first time, and Logan's Run and Halloween. That first ever 3D broadcast in the UK. There was something else in here that I was just going to look at, because talking about TV, because it was an interesting time, I think on some UK TV, because there was a few things that had just started up in 81, but were ending this year. That was it, yeah. So quite a lot of stuff that I'd watched. So Tis Was, which was a Saturday morning TV program, had just finished its run. The successor, which was a late night adult version called OTT, took over, but yeah, didn't run for very long. And then you've got things like Noggin the Nog, which was a cartoon, had a bit of a run from 79 to 82. I remember this as a really young child seeing this. Yeah, Not 9 O'Clock News, which was a comedy sketch show with so you can see a rather young Rowan Atkinson in there. And yeah, that's something I watched a lot. Multicoloured Swap Shop, which was an early, like, groundbreaking Saturday morning show, which initially is what I watched, and then when they started showing Tis Was, I switched over to that, because Tis Was had bands on it. So, they play videos on there. So they played like Judas Priest, and they'd have bands in the studio as well. So I remember I'd pick up on a lot of music through watching Tis Was. I think also the Tube TV show on a Friday afternoon, Friday evening, was imminent in 82, and that had loads of bands on it as well. I'm just looking back here to see. So yeah, Channel 4 had just started up. So yeah, Channel 4 in November. So that wasn't until November of that year. And the Tube was on Channel 4. So yeah, wow. So prior to that, there would have been BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV. And then some like regional variants of those, of ITV regional variants. And so Channel 4 was the fourth channel that appeared. That's funny. Think about that. And this is a real classic Open All Hours as well. It had a run in that period. It's funny, it seems it was on a lot longer, but it was only 26 episodes. It's been repeated like multiple times. And it's a knockout. I'll include a link to these, so if you're not familiar with these, there's some real classics in this area actually. So I'll include a direct link to ending this year if you want to know a little bit more about UK TV around that time period. It's pretty, nostalgically famous stuff, and things like The Goodies as well. So there we have it. That's all I want to really talk about in this episode. I've probably not made it any shorter. I've probably still running into about an hour and a half. But I think slightly tweaking it like that will probably stop me doubling up too much in future episodes. So thanks once again for listening and watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.